Good evening. I now call the Winton Woods Board of Education regular meeting to order. It is 6:30 p.m. on Monday, June 20th, 2016. If everyone in the audience would please turn down or turn off or silent their electronic devices and rise with me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated. Mr. Seymour, would you please call the roll?
Dr. Johnson?
Here.
Mrs. Kuhn?
Here.
Mrs. Ruggless?
Here.
Mr. Birdie? Here. Mrs. Miranda?
Present. Our first item on the agenda this evening is our district honors, recognitions, gifts, and introductions. Mr. Superintendent, you have the floor.
Yes, Madam President and Board, thank you very much. I'm excited about tonight where I can get a chance to brag about young people and their success. So the first honors will be for the Math Kangaroo Olympiad. And I was just cautioned, Mrs. Prezzicito, not the mom, the daughter, is saying, I am not in the 10th grade, I'm going to the 11th grade. So make sure you get that right, Superintendent. All right. So here's this great thing that happened. Aversa and Nico Lantonio. Yes, sir. I can just call you Nico? All right, thank you, sir. Placed first in Ohio in their respective levels at the Math Kangaroo Olympiad in March. Bravo. What an incredible honor. And the next piece, so we're going to come up with a video very soon. All right, so stay tuned. All right, okay? And so the next one is the regional dance competition. So, all right. Tell me how many instruments you play. 5. 5 instruments. All right, that's incredible. How many of you play one? 5. All right, the bathtub shower does not count as the instrument. All right, so I want to brag a little bit about Mrs. Prezzicito. The Board of Education congratulates 11th grader Aversa Prezzicito, who at the Louisville Regional Dance Competition in May earned the High Goal Award as well as the high score in her category. Also in May at the Dayton Regional Dance Competition, Aversa scored platinum as well as 2nd overall in the advanced level. Wow, what an incredible accomplishment. So, all right, so we brought the awards. You know, sometimes people say they win something and we don't get to see it. Absolutely incredible. Wow. So where do you get your inspiration? Your mom, okay? And Dad just kind of hangs in there? All right. I think this is an incredible symbol of your greatness, a symbol of your completeness. I think the other thing that makes it very exciting, not only do you work on dance and music and all these other great things, you're an incredible student as well. So we are very, very proud and honored to have you in our district. Okay? All right. So how does he get into this? How does he get into the role? Because it seems like you're taking all the thunder. So what does he do? You're shy today? Okay, all right. Are we ready for the video? We're ready for the video. You want to tell a little bit about the video, Nico?
It's awesomeness in video form.
Say it again.
Awesomeness in video form.
Awesomeness in video form.
Awesomeness in video form. Okay.
Activities for being friendly.
All right. Let me read that. Okay. As a proud sponsor of the 2016 Celebrity Video Contest, Kendall would like to congratulate you with earning a place in the finals. In recognition for your hard work and inspiring creativity and our belief that great spellers come from great readers. We're excited to award you a Kindle Paperweight loaded with great tools like WordWise, Vocabulary Builder, Kindle Free Time. Kindle Paperweight is perfect for discovering new books and ensuring you'll always have something to read in the future. From Amazon Kindle. Very good. Bravo. So, hold it. That was somebody calling you for another award. Ms. Jordan, are we ready? Yes. Okay. We can put a pause on it. We'll come back and
Yes.
bring in.
Yeah,
Yes.
we have technical difficulties, but we'll resolve them. in
Okay.
5 minutes.
We'll go on and we'll come back to this portion of the show. All right. So, pictures, come up. Let's get some lights, please. Thank you. Grave all those awards and everything. Okay, show that. Perfect. I'll let it come up.
It's the buttons in front, like that, there.
You have to hold it.
Well, more than one?
Yeah. Probably get your copy
Hey,
too.
turn this way. All right.
Bravo. We'll go through the rest of the recognitions, and then they'll have the technology set up, and we'll be ready to move forward. All right. The next recipient is Miss Hillary Brock. Is she here tonight? Okay. I'm going to read a little bit about Miss Brock, even though she's not here, and I may have to read it again next month when she schedules with us. But this is from Miss Michelle Kozlowski. When I think of all that Hillary Brock has done for our fine arts students, there are many things that come to mind. Hillary has served as the parent volunteer coordinator for the fall play and the musical, including coordinating printing of posters and t-shirts for the students and their distribution. As if administering those tasks was not enough, she has done the following through the years: served on the Performing Arts Boosters Board, organized and ordered awards, ran the Drama Awards event including refreshments and programming, coordinated the pizza artwork night, coordinated food for parents, ran concessions for the fall play and musical, provided pizza and other refreshments for the final circle, the post-musical celebration event for the cast, helped to advertise the show, printed programs, printed pictures of the performance of the kids as keepsakes. It is overwhelming to think of the holes that will need to be filled as Hillary graduates from being a high school parent, but we'll always appreciate the time, talent, and energy that they have poured into supporting the fine arts program and students. Hillary Brock has truly gone the extra mile as an invaluable parent volunteer. Bravo to Ms. Brock. Brandon Smith. Is something about your last name that just inspires me? Love it. Yes. All right. Before I read about Mr. Smith, I'd like to say, you know, one of the things that really inspires me is when you've already transitioned and you come back. If we can get all of our alum to come back, we would be the most powerful school district in the country. So, Brandon, thanks for leading that charge. Okay. Community Spirit Award, Brandon Smith. Brandon Smith is one of those rare men that love giving back to the school he graduated from. Brandon started helping out with the marching band drum line about 6 years ago or so. After coming back to play in the alumni band, he has become a vital part of the program. Brandon goes well above and beyond just helping students with music. He will frequently make phone calls and set up a good rapport with the parents and has provided many rides to and from rehearsals. The students look to Brandon as a big brother or really cool uncle. They trust him and know that he just wants him to be good. Brandon loves being someone that makes a difference. When the band got invited to China, his first response was, "When are we going?" And he paid the full price to go and work, and I don't think he would have missed it for the world. The last couple of years, he has requested being allowed to attend graduation as a staff member. He wants to see those kids graduate. He is always looking for new ways to involve alumni, and he is always trying to instill pride in the kids that go to Winton Woods. He is a proud graduate, tells anyone who will listen how great the students are, and bought a house in Forest Park so his tax dollars would come to help us. Brandon has not always been the easiest kid to teach. He was terrible. No, doesn't say that. But he was far from one of the most talented. Ever since he started working with the drum line, he has become an invaluable member of the band staff. We're lucky to have him, Brandon Smith. Thank you, Brandon. Before you take the picture, we would like for you to do something. Tell a little bit about this new thing that's going to happen the first day of school.
Okay.
You brought a vision to it, so we want the community to hear what it's going to look like.
Okay. A couple months ago, I was perusing through Facebook, and I saw a video of a bunch of professionals lined up in front of a school, congratulating and really encouraging all the students as they were walking into the school. And immediately, I saw the vision of Winton Woods High School lined up with professionals, alumni, community members, just praising and congratulating them for, number one, making that decision to come to the first day of school and making this year the best year moving forward. I really believe as a graduate of 2002, proud graduate, as I always say, proud graduate of Winton Woods High School. This is a great district. I mean, I used to tell people, when I used to walk out of here, I used to tell people, hey, Winton Woods, can't nobody beat us. There may be people next to us, there may be people behind us, but there's nobody in front of us because Winton Woods is the top. And I always will believe that Winton Woods is that district that can be #1 in the state of Ohio. So I'm going to do everything I can to give back and really motivate the students to believe that this is the district that can make their future happen, because it all starts here. So that's why I give back. It started here and it's going to end here for me. So, you know,
Bravo, bravo.
I guess I would be remiss if I didn't say hello to my parents and shout them out.
Yes.
My parents and my family are in the building. I appreciate you guys for coming out. And definitely Ms. Ashbrook for giving me the opportunity to work with the band. Actually, that statement that you made, I was a little bit of a troublesome student. But I must say that this district does produce some life-changing people, because probably my parents can attest to this. Nobody thought I was going to be the one to come back and do this for this district, because I was one of the ones that this district really had to put some work into to make a product like this. So I know it's possible. I'm a walking testimony that's possible.
That's good stuff.
And then thank you to Dr. Holt as well. Mr. and Mrs. Denny, I appreciate everyone. Thank you to the board. I appreciate everyone. Thank you.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you, Mr.
Thank
Smith.
you. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Where's Dad? Was it that hard, Dad? Thank you. Just wanted to confirm. Okay, we're ready?
Ready.
Okay. Let's get some lights, please.
celebrity if you read. Read, read, read. You can be a celebrity. Just listen up so you can spell like me.
Hi, my name is Nathan and I have autism. I am a celebrity because I won my school and passed the online test to represent Winton School District in the 2016 WCPO Scripps, Ohio Regional School.
Hi, my name is Nico and I'm a celebrity. I won my school B and passed the online test to represent Winton City Schools in the 2014 and 2015 WCPO Scripps, Ohio Regional Spelling Bee. And you can be a celebrity too. To be a celebrity, you have to kindle your love of reading. Reading is the best way to learn new words.
You can kindle your love of reading by surrounding yourself with great books.
Either in hard copy or on your Kindle.
Also surround yourself with erudite people like my big sister Eliana who loves to read.
And my celebrity big sister Versa, who represented our district in the regional beat twice. She's very erudite. Erudite is a great word to know for a read. Erudite is a Latin word that means knowledgeable. Erudite. E-R-U-D-I-T-E. Erudite. Another great word to know for a beat is Nathonic. You might think it means something related to Nathan, but it doesn't.
Nathonic has a silent G at the beginning and it means harmony or flattering.
So Nathonic describes a person who is flattering someone. Wow, Nathan, you're so smart.
No, you're the smartest.
No, you are. You're so tall.
But you're so handsome.
No, you are.
No, you are.
Would you two stop being so Nathonic?
Nathonic.
G-N-A-T-H-O-N-I-C. Nathonic.
The great thing about reading is you can do it anywhere.
You don't have to sit and be a couch potato when you read. You can be active too. For instance, you can read even while exercising, even while riding a seesaw, even while hanging around, even while sliding. Even while riding a bike, as long as you're not the one steering. You can even read in here. Nah, that's taking it a bit too far.
Nico, would you like to take the read through and frolic on the trampoline?
Frolic? Why, I would love to frolic. Frolic comes from Dutch and it means to play cheerfully and energetically. Let's frolic. Frolic. F-R-O-L-I-C. Frolic. As you can see, you can kindle your love of reading anywhere.
So start reading and you can be a celebrity too. Viva Juan Kendall.
So vote for us so we'll win them. Did you see what I just did there? I invented a new word. Windle. It means to win a Kindle.
Winton. W-I-N-C-L-E. Word.
Bravo. Absolutely awesome. Awesome. Incredible. You want to say a few words about your window? Are you okay? Yes. Mom, come up and say a few words. Let's hear a little bit.
He has to come up too. I'll just help. I don't know why he's being shy. He's normally not shy at all. Sure.
No, that's what I said. That's not shy.
All right, he's holding on. All right. Mom, come on and do it for him. It's okay.
There we go.
Okay.
Me up by throwing me.
Okay, so you want to say, what did you win for winning, being a finalist?
A Kindle,
And what else?
a piece of paper,
And the trip to Washington.
and a trip to Washington,
That's the
D.C.
big one, the trip to Washington, D.C. for the National Spelling Bee.
Well, we're very, very proud of you, and thank you for representing our district.
Thanks.
You are an awesome young man. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent Smith, and congratulations again to all of our students and our wonderful alumni and community members. We will now take a 5-minute recess. We will now resume our regular board meeting. And we have no comments from the public, so we will just move on to the next item on our agenda, which is the approval of minutes as attached. Board members, unless you see any necessary changes to these minutes, a motion would be in order.
Madam President, I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
I'll second.
It's been motioned and seconded. Is there any further conversation? Seeing none, Mr. Seymour, would you please call that vote?
Dr. Johnson,
Aye.
Mrs. Kuhn,
Aye.
Mrs. Ruggles.
Aye.
Mr. Birdie,
Aye.
Mrs. Miranda.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. And our next item on the agenda is our treasurer's report. Mr. Seymour, you have the floor.
Well, we reconciled for the month of May, and we ended the month of May with $43.6 million in total revenues in the general fund, which we're pretty much done with our revenues in the general fund. As you know, we got our homestead and rollback in timely fashion, so we will have received it in the year it was intended. And the good news is, for the end of May, we were 5% under budget on our expenditures, which is something that the superintendent always likes to hear towards the end of the year. And then the financial activity for all of our funds, we had about 19 million in all funds, of which 18.3 represented the general fund. And then, of course, the next month I'll give you the report on the close of the year.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Seymour. Any questions, discussion for Mr. Seymour on this item? Seeing none, with no objections being heard, let the financial report for the month of May 2016 be submitted to audit. And Mr. Seymour, we're back to you for 7.01.
Our interest income for the month of May was $44,165, more than we made all last year. So our plan and our experiment by going to an outside investment agency has proved to be fruitful. And after that bond issue passes, we'll make some good interest.
Thank you, Mr. Seymour. Board, a motion would be in order for 7.01.
I'll make a motion to approve the investment report as presented by Mr. Seymour.
I'll second.
It's been motioned and seconded. Any further discussion?
Was that Mrs. Kuhn? I'm sorry.
That was Dr. Johnson.
Sorry.
Seeing none, Randy, would you please call the vote?
Dr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mrs. Kuhn?
Aye.
Mrs. Ruggles?
Aye.
Mr. Birdie?
Aye.
Mrs. Miranda.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. We will move on to 7.02.
Here you have before you is the final appropriations resolution, which I have to file with the county auditor, which shows where you ended the end of the year. Your tax funds, your general fund, and your permanent improvement remain the same. Your local funds, your student activity funds, your athletic, your lunchroom fund remain the same. The only funds that basically ended up different were those that I asked you to amend a couple of months ago. Was the straight A grant. We got an extension on that, so we will be spending part of those funds next year. And then we also had the agency fund, and we did have $9,000 come through for the Ohio Athletic Association for an event that we hosted. So those are the only two major changes for the final appropriations that we'll file. And I also attached an amended certificate that I'll file. We always have to file that we have the adequate resources to cover the funds that we have asked to spend. So that would be the final for the current fiscal year.
Thank you, Mr. Seymour. Board, a motion would be in order on this one.
Madam President, I would like to approve the final appropriations, am I in the right one? Yes. Appropriation resolution for having technical difficulty for fiscal year 2016.
Yeah.
As presented. Sorry. Second.
It's been motioned and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Seymour, would you please call that vote?
Sure. Dr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mrs. Kuhn?
Aye.
Mrs. Ruggles?
Aye.
Mr. Birdie?
Aye.
Mrs. Miranda?
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Mr. Seymour will move on to 7.03.
Next is your temporary appropriations for the year that will start July 1st, a few days away. And basically, you are just giving me a temporary appropriations so that I can pay bills in July and make payroll. Obviously, as you new members do not know, but I will come back with a full 5-year forecast and a full appropriations, and we'll review them, and you'll have input at a work session, and then we'll also discuss at the regular meeting in August, and if you need more time, we can even go into September. It doesn't have to be filed until October 1st. So this would only be like a temporary measure.
Madam President, I would like to make a motion to approve the temporary appropriations resolution for fiscal year 2017 as presented.
I'll second.
It's been motioned and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Seymour.
Sure. Dr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mrs. Kuhn?
Aye.
Mrs. Ruggles?
Aye.
Mr. Birdie?
Aye.
Mrs. Miranda?
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. And Mr. Seymour, back to you for 7.04.
The next resolution is declaring the necessity of a bond issue. And upon your approval, I will certify that to the county auditor and the Board of Elections, and we will submit the question to the electors of the school district. This basically resolution will direct me to send down to the county auditor the amount of the bond issue, the maturity, and the interest rates. They in turn will certify what millage it will take to meet those 3 variables and to return that to us. At that point, then, you would have your next resolution, which would be the resolution to submit it to the voters on November election. This is simply to get that millage that you would have, so you would have that to work with to make the next decision.
Thank you, Mr. Seymour.
Madam President, I would like to make a motion to approve the resolution declaring the necessity of the bond issue, certifying the same to the county auditor and the Board of Elections, and submitting the question to the electors of the school board as presented.
I'll second.
It's been motioned and seconded. Is there any further discussion?
If I might just weigh in, I'm very excited about this opportunity. It's a very compelling question where the state of Ohio is allowing our district greater resources to allow our district to build new schools. This is a very important question that our community needs to address and to look at. So I think this next step puts us that much forward to satisfy that question and solve a lot of issues that we have plaguing our community.
Any further discussion, board? Seeing none, Mr. Seymour, would you please call that vote?
Sure. Dr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mrs. Kuhn?
Aye.
Mrs. Ruggles?
Aye.
Mr. Birdie?
Aye.
Mrs. Miranda?
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. And Mr. Seymour, 7.05.
This is the resolution where I will be certifying the maturity of the bonds at 37 years. The maximum you can go to is 40, but also you will have furniture and fixtures, which are 5. So they try to determine based on the size of the issue what will be a 5-year and a 40-year life, and we decided it would be 37 years for the life of the whole bond. I don't know if you have any questions or if that makes sense the way I explained it, but usually our financial advisor helps us along with that, along with our attorneys.
Thank you, Mr. Seymour.
I do have one question. So this bond will last 37 years?
Yes,
This is the life instead of 40?
It will be 37 years on the ballot. After passage, it would mean that it would be millage for 37 years.
Mhm.
Do I hear a motion, board?
Madam President, I'd like to make a motion to approve the resolution requesting the fiscal officer to certify the maximum maturity of bonds as presented.
I'll second.
It's been motioned and seconded. Any further questions or discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Seymour.
Dr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mrs. Kuhn?
Aye.
Mrs. Ruggles?
Abstain.
Mr. Birdie?
Aye.
Mrs. Miranda?
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Seymour. Our next item on our agenda are reports from the superintendent. Mr. Smith, you have the floor for 8.01.
Yes, Madam President and Board. All the activities, with the exception of the high school, are occurring in the intermediate building this summer. And there are three major activities that are taking place beginning June 21st to July 12th. Summer programming, which is 8 to 11:30. June 21st to July 22nd. The Envisions Academic Summer Enrichment Program. And then June 21st to July 25th. This is one of the most important pieces. There's lunch being served for any student in the community, and we really encourage kids to come out and partake of the lunch, and that's going to run from 12 to 1. If you get a chance, Board, it would be really good for the children to see you. Come and volunteer. The executive team has already said that they would come and volunteer to serve lunches within the next few weeks. Correct, team? Okay, thank you. All right.
Mr. Smith, it was June 21st through July
22nd. For which one?
for the lunch.
Yeah, to the 25th.
25th.
25th, approximately like a month.
Sure. And what times do they?
12 to 1.
And if we can volunteer, who do we contact?
If you go down and show your handsome face, Mr. Birdie, they'll put you right in that line.
All right.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Superintendent. We'll move on to 8.02.
This is the certification of standards governing types of foods and beverages sold on school premises. And Madam President and Board, the principals of the building have a very important task to make sure that things are right. So I'm going to read the memo that was crafted by Mr. Denny regarding the certification of standards governing foods, types of foods, and beverages. As required by Ohio Revised Code 3313.814, and pursuant to Winton Woods City Schools Board of Education Policies 8500 and 8510, all Ohio public schools must meet certain nutrition standards on all foods sold on school premises during the school day. This affects the Child Nutrition Department as well as all vending on school premises and any school stores. Under the Ohio statute, the school day is further defined as the period of time from midnight through 30 minutes after the end of the regularly scheduled school day, each day school is in session. We are pleased to report that the Child Nutrition Department has continued to meet these guidelines and requirements this school year. Further, per board policy, all of the a la carte food items sold in the lunchrooms meet or exceed the guidelines established by the Alliance for a Healthier Generation, and all beverages meet the Ohio requirements and guidelines. School principals are responsible for overseeing the use of vending machines, school stores, and fundraisers in their respective buildings. We can report that our schools are also in compliance with applicable requirements.
Thank you, Superintendent. Next item is 8.03.
Yes, this is for information, discussion, and approval. These are the new and revised board policies. These are first reads. The procurement and use of auto injectors in emergency situations. I'd like to say a little more about this one. Ms. Darcy has worked diligently with a local medical facility to make sure that we were in compliance and to make sure that we have the auto injectors ready to go at a moment's notice. It's a hard deal simply because we have to make sure that they're current, and so we'll have to kind of recycle from time to time to make sure that they're not expired. So that's a very important one. Policy 6114, cost principal spending federal funds. Policy 6116, time and effort reporting. 6325, finances procurement. 6550, finances travel payment and reimbursement. 7310, property, disposition of surplus property. 7450, property, inventory. And finally, 8500, operations food service.
Thank you, Mr. Superintendent. Before we move on to the superintendent's recommendations, board members, we have a need for an executive session. Do I hear a motion?
Madam President, I'd like to make a motion to move into executive session for the discussion of matters concerning personnel and salary schedules.
I'll second.
It's been motioned and seconded. Any further discussion? I would just like to let our guests and our wonderful Waycross here know that we are going into executive session. We will leave this room and come back. Mr. Seymour, would you please call that vote?
Dr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mrs. Kuhn?
Aye.
Mrs. Ruggles?
Aye.
Mr. Birdie?
Aye.
Mrs. Miranda?
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. We will now move into executive session. All right, Mr. Seymour, would you please call the roll?
Dr. Johnson?
Here.
Mrs. Kuhn?
Here.
Mrs. Ruggles?
Here.
Mr. Birdie?
Here.
Mrs. Miranda?
Present. We will now move into the next item on our agenda, which is the superintendent's recommendations. So, Mr. Smith, you have the floor, beginning with 10.01.
Thank you, Madam President and Board. The recommendation is to approve personnel schedules as presented, Schedule A, C, D, E,
About B.
and B.
It's in the files, it's not in the description. I'll make a motion to approve the personnel schedules as presented by Mr. Smith on schedules A, B, C, D, and E.
And I'll second it.
It's been motioned and seconded. Is there any further discussion?
I actually have a quick question. So when you do the exit interviews for
All
the
employees.
I'm sorry?
All employees.
Oh, okay. Is there an annual report of, what that interview looks like? Is it a survey or is
Well,
it just
actually,
a
this
dialogue?
year, what's going to happen? You guys will get a report at the end. If there are common themes that people have been saying, like
Right.
it was this, it was the climate, it was this, it was new tech. It could be a variety of things.
Right.
So I think it was supposed to be happening. It's happening now.
Okay.
That's all I can tell you.
Okay. So we can
And-
look forward to
yes.
it in the future.
Because I think it was very important for the board to see exactly what our employees saying about why they're transitioning. And all of it wasn't bad. There were some parts where it says I'm relocating, or I've got a new building I'm going to buy my house, as opposed to something different. So I think it was a wide range of why people were making transitions. So you will see it. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Seymour, would you please call that vote?
Dr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mrs. Kuhn?
Aye.
Mrs. Ruggles?
Aye.
Mr. Birdie?
Aye.
Mrs. Miranda?
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Mr. Superintendent, 10.02.
Yes, Madam President and Board, the recommendation is to approve the psychology salary schedules effective July 1st, 2016 to July 1st, 2017 as presented. Yes, that is it.
Board, a motion would be in order.
Madam President, I'd like to make a motion to approve the recommended psychologist salary schedule effective July the 1st, 2016 to July the 1st, 2017 as presented.
Second?
It's been motioned and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Seymour.
Dr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mrs. Kuhn?
Aye.
Mrs. Ruggles?
Aye.
Mr. Birdie?
Aye.
Mrs. Miranda?
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. 10.03, Mr. Superintendent.
Yes, to approve the recommended salary schedules for all classified employees effective July 1st, 2016 to July 1st, 2017.
I'll make a motion to approve the recommended salary schedules for all classified employees effective July 1st, 2016 and July 1st, 2017 as presented.
I'll second.
It's been motioned and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Seymour.
Dr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mrs. Kuhn?
Aye.
Mrs. Ruggles?
Aye.
Mr. Birdie?
Aye.
Mrs. Miranda?
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. We'll now move on to 10.04.
Yes, to approve the recommended nurse salary schedules effective July 1st, 2016 to July 1st, 2017.
Madam President, I'd like to make a motion to approve the recommended nurse salary schedules effective July 1st, 2016 through July 1st, 2017 as presented.
Second?
It's been motioned and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Seymour, please call that vote.
Dr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mrs. Kuhn?
Aye.
Mrs. Ruggles?
Aye.
Mr. Birdie?
Aye.
Mrs. Miranda?
Aye. Motion passes unanimously, and we will now move into 10.05.
To approve the proposed revised salary schedule for exempt employees effective July 1st, 2016 as presented.
Madam President, I'd like to make a motion to approve the proposed revised salary schedule for exempt employees effective July 1st, 2016 as presented.
I'll second.
It's been motioned and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Seymour?
Dr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mrs. Kuhn?
Aye.
Mrs. Douglas?
Aye.
Mr. Birdie?
Aye.
Mrs. Miranda?
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. And Superintendent, back to you for 10.06.
To approve the recommended salary schedules for substitutes effective July 1st, 2016.
Madam President, I'd like to make a motion to approve the recommended salary schedules for substitutes effective July the 1st, 2016 as presented.
I'll second.
It's been motioned and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Seymour, would you please call that vote?
Dr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mrs. Kuhn?
Aye.
Mrs. Douglas?
Aye.
Mr. Birdie?
Aye.
Mrs. Miranda?
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. 10.07, Mr. Superintendent.
Yes, Madam President and Board, to approve the fiscal year 2017 bus bid awards as presented.
I'll make a motion to approve the fiscal year 2017 bus bid awards as presented.
Second.
It's been motioned and seconded. Any further discussion?
I don't know that this is necessarily discussion. I just wanted to applaud Mr. Denny for his homework that he gave us for the bus bids
Always.
and
Yeah.
how
Always.
thorough it was in explaining that he went through getting 3 different bids and on the 2 selections. And I think that it cleared up any kind of question that you could possibly have.
Yeah.
So
Well,
just,
I have
you
to
know,
And not just pricing, but the bid spec completion
Yeah.
percentage, just,
Yeah.
how.
But I'd like to applaud Mr. Denny as well, Vice President Vice President Johnson and Mr. Birdie. This is just an indication of the consistency that Mr. Denny has with all of the work. It is always this well done. And I'm not sure if people are aware, but he and I have long meetings about a lot of things. And so he is always prepared. So thank you for your consistency, sir.
One other thing too, as a new board member, it made it easy for me to digest some of this information. It's still new, we're still learning, but it was very helpful that I found it to give a
Yeah,
lot
we
more
also have to
information.
stay in the rotation of buses because in the event that we don't keep our fleet up and we don't purchase a few at a time, you'll run into a storm where you're trying to purchase 10 buses that will wreck the system. So, thank you, sir.
I actually have a question for Mr. Denny. Now, are there not special needs buses for 72 passenger? I just remember, I believe when we did a training, they talked about it makes sense to get 72 passenger. So I was just thinking, I noticed that it was just 54
Right.
passenger.
You can buy a 72 passenger bus and you can pull all the seats out and you can install the
Oh.
Braun lift. It's a very specialized lift package, but
Okay.
you tend to not fill it up
Yeah.
Okay.
because it's running special routes designed just to pick up students that do have disabilities. And a student's IEP, individual education plan, has to state that they get a specialized transportation service. So it's not like you can easily take a 72 passenger bus, fill it with students with disabilities, and then stop along the way and pick up students that don't have
Right.
those same types of disabilities, if that makes sense.
Yes, it makes sense.
So 54 is generally as big as they go for most districts.
Bravo.
So it just makes sense to do the 54.
Yes,
I got
ma'am.
it. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Any further questions or discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Seymour, would you please call that vote?
Dr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mrs. Kuhn?
Aye.
Mrs. Douglas?
Aye.
Mr. Birdie?
Aye.
Mrs. Miranda?
Aye. Motion passes unanimously, and we will now move into 10.08.
Yes, Madam President and Board, you may have seen that these looked like timely entries. What we were waiting for is the bids to come in appropriately. So you may have gotten this in your packet at the final hour, but we couldn't present anything until we actually had the bids in hand. So Mr. Denny he rushed the bidders to say, listen, we have a timeline because this work really has to start July 1st in order to meet it. We ran into a very unfortunate situation last year where we didn't anticipate the bridge was going to create a storm for us. One of the things about concrete and masonry work, you can run into something that you don't anticipate. So we'd like to start sooner than later, and that's why we were waiting for the bids to come at the final hour. Correct, Mr. Denny? Yes. Okay, all right. So the recommendation is to approve the fiscal year 2017 elementary and high school concrete repair bid award as presented.
I'll make a
Oh, go ahead.
I'll make a motion to approve the fiscal year 2017 elementary and high school concrete repair project bid award as presented.
And I'll second.
It's been motioned and seconded. Any further discussion?
Madam President, I just want to point out that our district has an ongoing responsibility to repair our buildings that are aging. This is just another indication where it costs money for not only 2 buildings, but we have 6 buildings where this is going to be an ongoing issue. And I appreciate Mr. Denny getting good bids and being very aggressive in getting that bid work done. However, it doesn't preclude the fact that we have to come up with the money to make these needed repairs, and the fact that we have a question that will be before our community: how can we put that money to best work one day? So I hope our audience and our community members know that we still have an important responsibility to take care of the buildings we have in our possession today, and it costs money. It's going to cost money ongoing, but I just wanted to highlight the importance of to contrast this along with new building construction question.
I think, Ms. Kuhn, you make an excellent point, and it seems like you've been in Mr. Denny's meeting with me, because at the end of the day, the public has to understand there was no bond, there was no levy in order to raise funds to make these repairs. This comes from the general fund. And as long as we keep making repairs, it will be very difficult for us to catch up with this, because the general fund cannot absorb everything. And once you start going into the general fund, you're taking money away from instructional strategies. That's the fear that we have. So, good point. Thank you very much.
Any further discussion?
I do have a question. Thank you, Mr. Denny. One, as a new board member, I'm looking forward to understanding a little bit more of the bid process. But I guess one of the questions that I do have is, as we are awarding companies, how do we ensure that there's no conflict of interest with that company that we have given that process to? And I guess that goes for all the rest of the questions there.
Yeah, and I forgot to say good evening, board. So, good evening. Now, thank you for the question. It's a good one. There are actually, if you look at the bid packets, they're usually fairly large. It's oftentimes pushing in on 100 pages, and I'd be happy to share those with you if you'd ever like to see them. But there are actually forms in there called anti-collusion forms that have to be notarized. They have to be signed. There's a variety of procedural safeguards that the state of Ohio puts in place to ensure that that kind of thing does not happen. And there's an anti-terrorism assertion form, that you assert that essentially all the funds that have to do with the project that are not going to be rerouted toward. Yeah, I mean it's pretty interesting. That's a Homeland Security requirement. So there's a lot of requirements. So I would say that's probably the best safeguards are the ones the state has actually put in place that we follow very closely.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any further questions or discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Seymour, would you please call that vote?
Dr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mrs. Kuhn?
Aye.
Mrs. Ruggless?
Aye.
Mr. Birdie?
Aye.
Mrs. Miranda?
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Mr. Superintendent will move on to 10.09.
Yes, Madam President and Board, the recommendation is to approve the fiscal year 2017 pavement rehabilitation project bids as presented. These are comparable to what you've already reviewed before.
Board, a motion would be in order.
Madam President, I'd like to make a motion to approve the fiscal year 2017 pavement rehabilitation project bid as presented.
Second.
It's been motioned and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Seymour?
Dr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mrs. Kuhn?
Aye.
Mrs. Ruggles?
Aye.
Mr. Birdie?
Aye.
Mrs. Miranda?
Aye. Motion passes unanimously, and we'll move into 10.10.
It's 10.10, Madam President and Board. These are new replacement and revised board policies. You've already had these in your binder for review last month, and so we're asking that these be the replacement policies on independent educational evaluations 2460, 5330.03, procurement and use of asthma inhalers in emergency situations, 6111, finances, internal controls, 6112, finances, cash managements of grants, 4162, classified staff drug and alcohol testing of CDL license holders, 6110, finances, grant funds, policy 1130, administration, conflict of interest, 3113, professional staff, conflict of interest, 4113, classified staff, conflict of interest, 5112, students' entrance requirements, 5200, students' attendance, 5223, program release time for religious instruction, 7300, property, disposition of real property, personal property, and finally 9270, relations, education outside the schools, homeschooling.
Madam President, I'd like to make a motion to approve the new replacement and revised board policies as presented.
Second.
It's been motioned and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Seymour, would you please call that vote?
Dr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mrs. Kuhn?
Aye.
Mrs. Ruggles?
Aye.
Mr. Birdie?
Aye.
Mrs. Miranda?
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. And Mr. Superintendent, 10.11.
10.11. The recommendations to approve the Scarlett and Gray custodial contract as presented. I'd like to say a little more about that one. That original contract has been modified, meaning that the new percentages for Scarlett and Gray would be 2.5 this year, 2.5 next year, and of course there would be no increase of percentages for year 3. So that's being consistent with all of our other agreements as far as percentages and raises are concerned. So that's the, and at this point, we don't have any discrepancies about the work of Scarlett and Gray. And from our review, there is no conflict of interest. Okay.
Board, a motion would be in order.
Madam President, I'd like to approve the Scarlett and Gray custodial contract as presented.
I'll second.
It's been motioned and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Seymour, would you please call that vote?
Sure. Dr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mrs. Kuhn?
Aye.
Mrs. Ruggles?
Nay.
Mr. Birdie?
Aye.
Mrs. Miranda?
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Superintendent. We will now move into the legislative report, which I have placed in front of you tonight. You have both a summary of all the items that I'm presenting in my report, as well as a copy of the OSBA briefcase like I provided to you last month. I think going forward, this will be the format in which I provide this to you. That way you have all of the evidence and references and things like that. Since I know that our community and our board respectively craves evidence and loves to see data, number one on my report, as I always bring you something about charter schools, is that the latest study found that federal grants totaling nearly $30 million have gone to 108 Ohio charter schools that either never opened or have since closed. The link to this study is provided in the packet there that I gave you. This is very important to put this into perspective as we talk about and fight for our tax dollars to be brought back locally, to see that, you know, this waste of federal grant money is being given to and diverted to charter schools who have since failed and or never opened, and here we still are struggling for resources.
Madam President, I'd like to add one thing, and I think this legislative report is very comprehensive, but I think here's a major piece. When you talk about the feds and the $30 million that's failed, they're looking at it as a dollar, but they forget about the children. So that dollar amount is multiplied by how many children that are in that pipeline of failure that's
Very
been
true.
created by the manipulation of dollars and cents.
And where those children go, respectively.
That's the problem, because they have to be retooled now and put back in a situation where they have to be made whole again because you failed them.
Right.
Failing, using dollars inappropriate is one thing, but when you have the consequences of the children who can't make the decision for themselves, it's overwhelming, and I think it destroys a community.
Right. I agree 100%. Thank you. Number 2 on there is just a little tidbit of information that for our Capitol Conference this year, which always happens in November, OSBA has officially announced the Black Caucus speaker to be Dr. Rodney D. Coates, who is sort of a local from southwestern Ohio, as he's the director of Black World Studies program at Miami University. You can read all the details and when that Black Caucus meeting happens, which is typically, it's always on the first night of the conference, correct? So that information's there in your packet. Number 3, which kind of goes along with number 1, but
Definitely.
I don't know if you've been hearing all of the stories on this, but it's kind of blown up, not only here in Ohio, but nationally as well. I hear it on the radio a lot, that a national publication calls ECOT, which is an acronym for the Electronic Classroom of Tomorrow, one of the new dropout factories. The New York Times actually reported that Ohio's ECOT, or Electronic Classroom of Tomorrow, has more students failing to finish high school in 4 years or dropping out more than any other school in the country. So here in Ohio is the new dropout factory for ECOT across the entire United States. So I thought that was very interesting and disheartening all at the same time. Number 4, the Ohio Supreme Court has ruled that email communications will be classified and open to the Ohio Meetings Act. I brought that to you last month, and there was another bit of that story that came out recently, so I thought I'd put that in there again. Also in this packet, in the briefcase, are 2 opportunities for new board member training workshops. Also in the packet is funding opportunities that I would encourage the superintendent and the treasurer to look into these to determine our options and if we would, even qualify for the couple that they put in here. But I thought that was nice that they put those in here now. And then last but not least, your bill updates. As most of you know, the legislation at the State House has gone into summer session now. And I've just highlighted here for you the 3 different bills and their status as of closing into summer session. So HB 113 has been sent to the governor for signature. HB 441 is headed to the Senate for further consideration when they reconvene. And 474 is currently on hold. And all the details for those 3 House bills can be found in your briefcase here. And let's see if I wanted to highlight any of these. So regarding House Bill 113, it included an amendment to permit school districts, community schools, and STEM schools to use economically disadvantaged funds to employ principals and assistant principals who completed the Bright New Leaders for Ohio Scholars program, in addition to initiatives already in law. As of this time of this publication, this legislation had been sent to the governor for his signature. So it looks like that one has successfully moved through, and I don't think there's any sites or seeing that he's going to veto it, so that one's pretty much a done deal. HB 441 passed the House and is headed to the Senate for further consideration. OSBA's opinion is in there, as well as HB 474, currently on hold, and will receive several other hearings before moving anywhere. So that is your legislative update for today, June 20th. Our Great Oaks report will not be given this evening. Mr. Cleary said since it is summer, there's not much new news to report on other than what would be repetitive. So we will move right into item 13. As we don't have any board motions or recommendations, we'll just move into our comments from our members of the Board of Education. So we'll start for once with Mr. Birdie.
I did have the pleasure of attending the Youth Mental Health First Aid course that was held at the high school library, and it was kind of eye-opening and educational as to what some of the teachers, staff might be dealing with on a daily basis and some of the challenges that they face. No easy answers there, but kudos to everybody that's trying to make it better for these children that are having difficulties in their lives. So saw some interesting videos. A gentleman who was suicidal that actually jumped from the Golden Gate Bridge and was one of only 4 people, I think, that have survived and can walk after jumping from the Golden Gate Bridge. And to hear his story and just the part where he says as soon as he let go of the railing, he was like, what am I doing? But it was too late to make a change. But so anything we can do to impact these children's lives and so that they don't get to that place would be a wonderful thing. So I applaud the school district for putting on that course. And there was a lot of athletic coaches, people that were there that spend time, not in an academic setting with these students and maybe hear different stories that the teachers don't necessarily get to hear on a daily basis.
Madam President, do you mind if I make a comment?
Go right ahead.
Many districts talk about mental health, but they don't do much about it until the situation is already a storm. When I proposed it to the executive team about why we needed to do it, there was not one person that didn't say, I think this will be a worthwhile venture. So even though we didn't take the course with you, there were 7 of our other executives that took the course prior to you taking it, and I think it's recommended so that everybody can be on the same page. What the community is now asking us for is, how do you help save my child, and what do you understand the warning signs associated with it? It may look like one thing, but when you take the course, it starts showing you what this mental health situation can actually do. And I think the major piece is getting them assistance in enough time. If you get me the right assistance, I can make it through. And I think that there are some districts that probably should have looked at it for a proactive instead of a reactive. So my job is to make sure that we're always on the cutting edge, to put our children first, and to make sure that they have all the subsequent information to be safe and knowledgeable. But the adults have to do their part, and we do our part by attending the professional development to make sure we're on target. So thank you.
And I'd just like to piggyback on that and applaud you for the proactivity. It's one thing to say we as a district are taking care of bullying. It's another thing to be proactive in taking care of mental health.
Bravo.
Because that comes first.
Yes, it does.
Mrs. Kuhn?
Well, I want to say Happy Father's Day to all of our fathers that are here. We appreciate all of the hard work. There's a lot of studies that show that fathers' involvement in their child's life improves their quality in the academics. So I do applaud all the fathers in our community and the hard work that goes into that role. And I didn't get to attend the meeting Jeff spoke about, but I do applaud that there's continuing education on many fronts. It's a core important part of what we do here. So, but thank you for that opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Kuhn. Mrs. Ruggles?
I have nothing tonight.
Okay. Dr. Johnson?
Well, as always, June is my reflective month because this is my birthday. It's the end of the school year, kind of officially. School is out. And I always just get an opportunity to just kind of look back and see some of the things that we've done. And again, I have to applaud our superintendent and our treasurer for some of the innovative thinking that they've done, some of the things that they've implemented this last school year and moving into the next school year, the things that they're planning on implementing, and to thank all the teachers that are teachers go on a break, but we never stop thinking about what we're getting ready to do next. And that's just the nature of the beast. If you love what you do in teaching, then you're teaching and learning to teach, and it's just a cycle. And many times they're off for the summer, but they're still working. There's professional development, there's preparation, and with the new tech things coming on, there's a lot of training going on this summer. And we just want to applaud and thank the teachers for doing that. Again, thanking the superintendent for being forward thinking again and bringing the mental health training. And there's just so much of that goes on with these two guys that I just don't think that you guys get applauded enough, and people don't know all the things that you all are doing. And so thank you again to the superintendent and the treasurer. Thank you to all the teachers and the administrators. And I'm sure I said that last month too, but when I just reflect, and I always use this month because, you know, you get a year older and you try to get wiser, I guess. So anyway, just to say thank you, and thank you to the my colleagues on the board, that we do kind of make an effort to strive and, you know, challenge each other to think deeper and to think about all of what's best for the 3 communities that we serve, and just so that people know that our intentions are fully to make this district better, just as it is for everybody, you know, on this panel. So just have that to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Johnson. As for my comments, they're just short and sweet, and it's kind of piggybacking off of some programs that we have that the superintendent mentioned earlier. But I would just encourage all of our district parents to send your kids to summer enrichment camps. Most of the programs and camps in our area have scholarships available, so they are available at no cost to you. And one that happens here in our very own district, which is put on by Envision Children, is very successful, and it continues to be every year. And then also the free lunch program open to all kids, children in our community over at the intermediate school on Waycross. Please come. Noon to 1 every day, right?
Yes.
Okay. And that's all I had. Mr. Superintendent, anything else from you?
Oh, Madam President, thank you.
Mr. Seymour, anything from you, sir?
No, thank you.
All right. Well, I do not see either a member from the Teachers Association or OPSE in the audience left this evening. So I would just like to thank you all for your attendance, and happy official first day of summer. And meeting adjourned.
Yeah, today's the longest day of the year.
It is.